at the trial, if Neville had telephoned Jeremy without replacing the receiver, the line between them would have remained open for 1 to 2 minutes. So during this time, Jeremy would not have been able to then pick up his phone and use it again, because it still would have been connected in that couple of minutes. But why would he have not used 999? So Jeremy told the police that he thought it wouldn't have made a difference on how soon they would arrive.
It wouldn't make a difference how soon they would arrive.
So
I heard gunshots next door. I mean, obviously he's not heard gunshots, but I'll use this as an example. I heard gunshots next door. Or let's use the same example. Next door calls me and turns around and says, oh, you know, my missus is going crazy with a sawn-off shotgun or whatever.
yeah.
It's going to make a difference.
I don't know.
You want people there as soon as possible.
If you was genuinely worried and not to think, oh my God, it's a prank call, like he's up to it again, like he's messing around with me, he's expecting me to turn up at the house. No. Your first point would be, I'm calling 999 and getting the police there as quick as possible.
If it had been the other way
I'm not going to take my time, even these days, as quickly as we've got it, to Google my local police station.
If it would have been the other way around, I would have understood it, but it was the bloke calling, the one with no mental problems whatsoever.
Yeah.
If they'd have said, oh, she called and said he's going crazy with a gun, and he called the standard line, I'd be like, you know what, I get it. Because she's probably imagining things. It's probably all in her head.
Yeah.
You know?
Now, he said he'd spent time looking up the number, and even though his father asked him to come quickly, he had first telephoned his girlfriend, Julie Mugford, in London, and then had driven slowly to the farmhouse. Jeremy acknowledged that he could have called one of the farm workers, but had not considered it. So they must have had farm workers, I'm guessing, in the vicinity.
Well, that's one thing. I just realised, wasn't it like 3:26 a.m?
Yeah, so early hours of the morning that he called.
Yours calls me at 3:26 a.m. It better be important if you're calling from one area and I'm in London, unless she's on night shift.
Well, who knows? Who knows what actually happened? So, again, he'd not considered like the workers.
Okay.
So, in early statements, he said he immediately telephoned the police after receiving his father's phone call. And then during later interviews, he said he called his girlfriend first.
Okay.
And then Jeremy said he was confused about the sequence of events.
Okay.
So it's possible, you know, he could get confused at the sequence of events. Something quite dramatic is happening. He's got confused.
Okay.
So Jeremy drove to the farmhouse, and when he was driving there, so did 3 police officers from Witham Police Station, who later testified that he was driving much more slower than them and that they had passed him. And they arrived at the farmhouse a couple of minutes before him.
What is essentially a 5-minute drive from his cottage.
Yeah, and if you've just received quite a dramatic phone call, your father's calling you frantically, you know, I think
you're speaking to the wrong guy. Because with most people, that's a plain, yeah, I'm going to get there straight off. In my case,
belting up that farmhouse.
In my case, I'd be like, put this bird on the phone, I'm going to give her 50 quid top, pull the trigger, I'm game. You know?
So you'd be belting up that road to get there as quickly as possible if you thought there was such a danger there. So the 4 of them, so the 3 police officers and Jeremy, waited outside the house for a tactical firearms unit to arrive.
Because there's a weapon involved.
Yeah, they're led to believe, yeah.
It's not just a pea shooter we're talking about, it was a semi-automatic rifle, wasn't it?
So they arrived at 5 a.m. and they decided to wait until daylight before entering.
So they arrived at 5 a.m. This sounds like something the police would do in the UK, for those who aren't too familiar. There's a live weapon on scene. There's been a report of somebody wielding a weapon, potentially a shooting. The police have been called. They've got there pretty quick.
Yeah.
They've called a armed unit.
Yeah.
And the armed unit has turned up 1 hour and 24 minutes later.
Well, yeah, they've turned up at 5 a.m. and they've decided to then wait until daylight.
I understand them wait until daylight because they're not sure about hostages or the entire situation. So I understand once they're on site making a different type of judgment call. I don't understand taking an hour and 24 minutes
No, it's
to
quite
get...
a long time, isn't it?
Mm.
But then he didn't call 999, did he?
No, but the police made this
But
call for
I don't know how
No,
it works with emergency-wise, whether...
no, if the police call something in, it's an emergency, isn't it? It's not even a member of the public. It could potentially be a
Precisely.
hoax call. It's real, it's legit.
So the police determined that all the doors and windows were shut, except for one window in the main bedroom on the first floor.
Okay.
Using a loud hailer, like a megaphone thing,
Yeah.
they spent 2 hours trying to communicate with Sheila. The only sound reported from the house was a dog barking.
Okay. Pretty sure that's not Sheila.
So when outside, police said Jeremy was calm. They asked him why she might have gone berserk with a gun. He replied, "I don't really know. She's a nutter. She's been having treatment." They also asked him why his father called him and not the police. He said that Neville was the type of person who might want to keep things in the family.
Mm-hmm.
He talked over the next few hours with the police about cars and saying how... I know, yeah, I can see that look on your face.
It's not even that. I'm sorry, at this point, okay, let's go back a little bit. I know I'm looking over your notes. He said, "I don't know, she's a nutter. She's been having treatment." They also asked him why his father called him and not the police. Okay, firstly, fair play. I don't know, she's a nutter. She's having treatment. Legitimate answer. I'm nervous. I'm a bit in shock. I don't know what's going on. She's a nutter. He said he was the type of person who might want to keep things in the family. Okay, but my answer would have literally been, "Dude, you're here to make sure this is safe. You tell me what's going on. I've got a call saying she's going through with a gun, and I can't get any answer out of you shouting with a megaphone."
Shocked,
for
scared,
2 hours.
Confused.
Okay? Get in there, do something, make something happen.
Shocked, scared,
I
confused.
want to know my family's safe. Yeah, I'd be the one at the door. So...
But apparently, yeah, he talked for the next few hours with the police about cars, saying how the OC caravan site would soon be able to stand him a Porsche.
Yeah, because that's going to be the first thing on your mind.
It's not really a thing that you kind of talk about when you think there's a serious situation going on in your family home.
No, not really.
Jeremy Bamber also told police that Sheila was familiar with guns and that they had gone target shooting together. He said that he'd been at the house earlier and he'd loaded the rifle himself as he thought he heard rabbits outside. He said he left it on the kitchen table, fully loaded, with a box of ammunition nearby.
Now, I'm in England and we have some pretty strict gun laws. And even I know that
He's on a farm.
Well, so it doesn't make two
I'm
tosses.
assuming
There's kids in the property. It doesn't matter. You don't leave it loaded.
Oh no, obviously not.
On the kitchen side with a box of ammunition next to it.
But in the sense of laws, he legally was able to have a gun.
Yeah, you're legally able to have a gun. That's not the issue.
No.
Wenzel had a gun. You know, he had a 12-gauge shotgun. He used to go rabbiting. And it was legal. He was licensed. Yeah. Well, no, it's different from this. Yeah. This is a semi-automatic rifle. But my point is, it's a gun. Yeah. And you have to keep everything separate. If you're transporting it, it has to be in a box. You can't just walk with it cocked over your arm. And that's...
So, a doctor who was called to the house said that the deaths could have occurred at any time during the night. He said that Jeremy appeared to be in a state of shock and that he'd broken down and he cried and he seemed to vomit.
Okay.
So,
do we have anything about going in, and I don't want to be too graphic, but going in and seeing a scene or anything here? Because we've just jumped from... Well,
this is kind of outside. So they've called a doctor in. This is kind of like the LinkedIn information there that the police said, "Hey, yeah, he's really calm. We've had a chat." And then the doctor...
It's here. It's on your next part.
Then the doctor, the next bit of like how Jeremy has appeared, has next been that he's in shock, he's broken down, he's cried, he's vomited.
So as soon as the medic's on site, he's like, "I need to put on a show."
So it's kind of different. Like, we don't really know why in that sense.
I mean, it can take time.
Yeah, shock.
It can take time.
So eventually, police entered the farmhouse at 7:54 a.m. using a sledgehammer to break the back door. The door had been locked from the inside, with the keys still inside the lock. The police found 5 bodies with multiple gunshot wounds. Neville Bamber was downstairs in the kitchen, and the other 4 bodies of June, Sheila, and Daniel Nicholas were upstairs. A total of 25 shots had been fired, mostly at close range. The order of the killings are not known, so we don't know which one of them was killed first because of the time. As I said, the doctor said he wasn't able to kind of place a time on it. Neville was found in the kitchen where a telephone was found with the receiver off the hook.
There's your first one.
Next to an empty cartridge case. Next to 22 cartridge cases. 22 cartridge cases. Police reported that chairs and stools were turned over, and there was broken crockery, broken sugar basin, and the ceiling light was also broken, and what looked like there was blood on the floor. So Neville was found in the kitchen, dressed in pyjamas, lying over an overturned chair next to the fireplace amid a scene suggestive of a struggle. He had been shot 8 times, 6 times to the head and face.
Jesus Christ.
Fired when the rifle was only a few inches from his skin. The remaining shots to his body had occurred from at least 2 feet away. That was based on where the empty cartridge cases were found. 3 in the kitchen and 1 on the stairs. The police concluded that he had been shot 4 times upstairs, but had managed to get downstairs where a struggle took place, and during which he was hit several times with the rifle and shot again, this time fatally. There were 2 wounds to Neville's right side and 2 to the top of his head, which would probably have resulted in unconsciousness. The left side of his lip was wounded, his jaw was fractured, and his teeth, neck, and larynx were damaged. The pathologist said he would not have been able to engage in purposeful talk. According to the Court of Appeal, there were gunshot wounds to Neville's left shoulder and left elbow. The court heard that he had black eyes and a broken nose, linear bruising to his cheeks, lacerations to the head, linear type bruising to the right forearm, bruising to the left wrist and forearm, and 3 circular burn type marks to the back. The linear marks were consistent with Mr. Bamber having been struck with a long blunt object, possibly a gun. One of the pillars of the prosecution case that was Sheila would not have been strong enough to inflict this beating on Neville, who was 6'4" tall and by all accounts in good health.
Yeah.
So, it's suggesting at the moment that it possibly wasn't Sheila that had gone mad with that gun.
At the same time, to just argue a point, I'm going to just speak about Dean and my granddad for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a rage. You remember the stories about the woman whose child got stuck underneath a car during an earthquake and she managed to lift this car up. Or when you're having an epileptic fit, you're like 20 times stronger than you are in life.
Yeah.
You can literally break chairs that you couldn't possibly do consciously. And, Dean having his episodes, he could turn in an eye blink. He turned on his mum. How many people do you know do that?
Yeah.
So, playing devil's advocate, these things are possible. They're just extraordinarily rare. Mm-hmm. And I would agree with what the guy's saying. It's unlikely, but it is possible.
So June's body and clothing were heavily blood-stained. She was found in her nightdress with bare feet. The police believe she had been sitting up during part of the attack, based on the pattern of blood on her clothing. She was found lying on the floor by the door of the master bedroom. June had been shot 7 times. 1 shot to her forehead between her eyes was fired from under 1 foot, that's 30 centimetres away. and that another shot to the right side of her head would have caused her death quickly.